Well, time now for a look at the latest polling. Nick Nanos joins us to break down the numbers. Nick is the founder and chief data scientist at Nanos Research. Good morning, Nick.
Hey, Matt. How you doing?
I'm very good. Thank you for being with us. Let's talk about and get into this. We're going to hear more from Pierre Poilievre on Question Period here on CTV tomorrow. Mark Carney still has a very big lead on him, but what are we seeing when it comes to the latest preferred prime minister numbers?
Well, you know, when we ask Canadians who they would prefer as prime minister, Mark Carney still has a significant advantage. Matt, you know, he's at around 51% of Canadians, with Pierre Poilievre over 20 points back at around 28 or thereabouts. And, you know, Matt, this has been the same trend line that we've seen throughout the last federal election and coming out of the last federal election. What's clear, at least, is that the Liberal advantage that we see today is largely about Mark Carney. It's not about people liking the Liberals. It's not about people liking what's happened in the last 10 years. It's been about Mark Carney as an individual and him having some brand strength.
Yeah, which is interesting to know, because that's a significant lead, at least at this point. I'm curious about ballot support, though, too, and how that translates into the difference and where we're seeing Liberals and Conservatives right now.
Yeah, you know, the thing is that when we look at the ballot support, it's much tighter, and it has been narrowing the gap between the Liberals and the Conservatives. We have the Liberals at around 42%. They're down 3 points in the last 4 weeks. Conservatives at 35, back 7 points, but they're up. The NDP are at 13 percentage points. The key thing here, Matt, is that the gap between the Liberals and the Conservatives has been narrowing. Now Pierre Poilievre, you can see he's starting to hit his stride. He won his by-election. He's back in the House of Commons. It's going to be interesting to see, Matt, whether he can continue to close the gap between the Liberals and the Conservatives. That said, probably explains why he's on a bit of a charm offensive, talking to Vashi and stuff like that, right? Because he personally significantly trails Mark Carney, but the parties are much closer.
Right, and it's interesting to note that even as Poilievre is going to face a leadership review as well on top of that, right? Nick, do we expect anything, you know, will that affect the numbers from your perspective at this point, or not really based on what you're seeing?
Well, we haven't seen any grumblings out of the Conservative team about Pierre Poilievre, other than being disappointed about not winning the last federal election. And I think the proof in the pudding will be for Pierre Poilievre how he conducts himself in the next while. Will he show a different side to himself? I expect him to be 100% consistent, because the guy's like, he's very disciplined when it comes to messaging. The big question is can he show these just a little different, and what he's learned from the last federal election, in order to close what I'll say the personality gap between him and Mark Carney.
Right. I can't let you go without talking about issues too. Clearly, we've been talking about Kuzma and talking about trade, but what are you seeing in the numbers?
Well, what we're seeing is meat and potatoes issues are on the rise right now. Trump's still the top national issue of concern at around 18%, followed by jobs at 17%. Worry about Trump has gone down a little bit, but concern about inflation up, concern about housing is up. You know, people are still focused on immigration. So think of those meat and potatoes issues. The other thing, Matt, and this is my last point, is that when the Canadians are less focused on Trump, the Conservative numbers go up, because Canadians are focused on those meat and potatoes issues that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are very strong at. So Trump out of the news, good for Pierre Poilievre. Trump in the news, good for Mark Carney.
Yeah, which is very interesting as we start to talk about, again, looking at the consultations and the renegotiation of Kuzma. So we will see. Nick Nanos, founder, chief data scientist at Nanos Research. Always appreciate your time, Nick. Thanks for this.